Well, good morning, everybody. And so we have another story from our book called Heavenly Hosts. And this one is The Miracle of Krankenberg, Germany from 1280. Okay. And so let's go ahead and begin. Karl and Franz leaned their shepherd sticks at the chapel door. Karl did not want to enter for Holy Mass. He always had an excuse for not going. Some days it was too cold, some days it was too hot. Today he was hungry for the sausage and bread in his leather sack. Karl watched his friend bless himself reverently before entering the chapel. If only I could be close to God just like Franz, I would be happy, he thought, but he brushed the thought aside. Let's skip Mass today. I'm not even awake, Karl said sleepily. It is Lent. We must prepare our souls for Easter, Franz said. Karl tried another tactic. I feel sick to my stomach. You'll survive, Franz said, giving him a nudge. The old pastor, Father Joseph, shuffled out of the sanctuary. He was a holy priest, but Karl tried to avoid him for confession. Some people thought Father Joseph could see into your heart. Look at the crucifix, my son, Father Joseph often said. You nailed Jesus to the cross by your sins. You pierced his side with your lukewarm faith. This could not be true. Karl did not consider himself lukewarm. Let's just say he was easily distracted and much too busy tending sheep to bother with prayers. Let old ladies with rosaries be doing the praying. All of this thinking so early in the morning made him restless. At Holy Communion, Karl kept the host in his mouth, but did not swallow. Concealing this fact from Franz, he left the church immediately and went out into the garden. Heavy rain began to fall. Karl sought shelter under an oak tree. He leaned against its rough bark and tried to swallow the host, but it stuck in his throat. As the chapel door opened, Karl turned his back. He spit the host into his hand and threw it against the tree. He turned toward Franz and pretended everything was fine. Franz patted him on the back. You look pale. What's the problem? Nothing more than throwing a host on the ground, Karl thought. Nothing more than mortal sin. He looked at the kind face of his friend and realized he could trust Franz. Well, I couldn't swallow the host, so I spit it out. Franz furrowed his brow. Let's look for it. It should be right here, by this big root. I don't see it, Franz said. Karl searched frantically to the exact spot where the host had fallen. It seemed to have disappeared into thin air. We have a mystery on our hands. I believe that we will get the answer, but not now. Someday you will learn about the strange disappearance of that host, Franz predicted. They crawled into the wet grass, carefully feeling around the roots. They turned over every stone. Flittering through clumps of grass proved fruitless. So immersed were they in their search that they did not see Father Joseph watching them. Did you lose something? He asked. Karl looked up into the face of the priest. Father Joseph wore a black hat pulled down over his face to keep out the rain. Water dripped off the brim. Slowly, Karl stood up, trying to think of what to say. Father Joseph waited patiently. He wore glasses with thick lenses that seemed to magnify his eyes. Once again, Karl felt Father Joseph could see right through him. Karl looked down at his muddy boots and couldn't speak. Let's go back into the church and have a talk, Father said. As spring changed to summer, Karl often thought about the strange disappearance of the host. It should have been right there under the tree. 2 years later, Carl heard that men were cutting the oak tree down for firewood. He decided to look for the host one last time. Perhaps it was buried deep in the soil underneath a root. When he arrived, woodsmen were already there, chopping the massive trunk. They were strong men and experts at the art of cutting trees. Carl knew one of them. His name was Eric. He had been cutting trees for many years. Their sharp axes gleamed in the sun, chopping at the hard wood. Like the rhythm of a clock, they alternated strokes, cutting through 100 years of growth. Finally, they were close. "Timber!" they cried. The oak tree fell with a loud thud. "Okay, it's safe," Eric said. It was all a routine matter until they examined the tree more closely. Eric took off his cap and scratched his head. "Now I've seen everything." Carl moved in for a closer look. He saw a small crucifix carved from the wood of the tree. Mysteriously, it was embedded in the trunk. A master craftsman created Christ at the moment of death. Carl gazed upon the crown of thorns, the cruel nails, and the pierced side. He had the host turned into a crucifix? The mystery perplexed him, but excited all the villagers. News of a miraculous crucifix spread far and wide. Never could Carl have imagined that hundreds of years later, a crucifix still exists. A Gothic church was built in honor of the miracle. To this day, pilgrims stand to marvel at the wondrous cross created from the sin of a repentant shepherd. There you go. What an amazing story. And once again, these are based on true stories of things that actually happened. That crucifix is still in existence that was found within the trunk of that tree. I mean, pretty amazing if you think about it. But we also need to realize the importance of the reverence of when we receive communion. It's not just a piece of bread. It's not just a little host or wafer, whatever people want to call it. It is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. It really is Christ. So when we come up to communion to receive, we need to do it reverently. We need to do understanding that we're receiving the most sacred thing. It is God himself. And so I hope this story will inspire you to approach the Blessed Sacrament with a great sense of reverence and understanding of the great gift that it truly is. And have a great day.